We're just waiting for some more people to arrive and then we'll begin. So thanks for your patience. We'll just start in 1 minute then. So welcoming everybody that's joining us. See, we have quite a number of participants already joining us. It's just another minute, thanks. Okay, I'm gonna jump in and let's get started. So I'd like to welcome you all. So good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to everyone for this fourth session of the Climate Action Africa webinar series, which is this day commemorating the International Women's Day. A little bit early, but always good to be ahead of the game. My name is Catherine Hill, and I am the Gender Equality Advisor for Climate Action Africa. And Climate Action Africa is funded by Global Affairs Canada and implemented by Alinea, Econoler, and WSP. So I'm delighted to welcome you to today's conversation on women's participation and leadership in an area at the heart of Climate Action Africa. We're honored to be joined by partners and practitioners whose work spans Ghana, Rwanda, and Uganda, each demonstrating how locally led, gender-responsive solutions are reshaping climate action across the continent, particularly Sub-Saharan Africa. Before we begin, I have some housekeeping points to share. I'd like to remind our guest speakers to speak slowly and to pause if switching because we have the interpretation. So please just pause when you switch languages, if you do switch languages. And I'd like to invite Alex now from our AV tech team who can walk us through the interpretation functions. So thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Catherine. Hi, everybody. I'm going to be doing this little version of my speech in French and in English. So I will start with English. If you need interpretation for today, you can find it on the bottom of your screen. On the toolbar, there's going to be a little planet icon. If you click on it, you'll be able to select a channel of your choice. Then, if you have any kind of problems throughout the webinar, you can reach me through the chat or through the Q&A box that is also on the bottom of your screen on the toolbar. If you are on a different device, such as a cell phone or something like that, sometimes you won't be able to see the little planet icon on the toolbar on your options. So you will have to go and select the More option, which is a little round with 3 dots in it as an icon. You click on it, and then you're going to be able to see the interpretation into the menu. So I wish you all a great conference. And now for the French version. Pour nos participants francophones qui ont besoin d'interprétation,
Si vous désirez utiliser la fonction, il suffit d'aller regarder sur le bas de votre écran, sur la barre d'outils. Il y aura l'icône d'une petite planète. Si vous cliquez dessus, vous aurez ensuite le choix du canal français ou anglais. Ensuite, si vous avez de la misère à l'apercevoir sur la barre d'outils, parfois, il va aller se placer dans dans la petite option More ou Plus, qui est un cercle, l'icône d'un cercle avec trois petits points à l'intérieur. Si vous cliquez dessus, vous verrez ensuite dans le menu déroulant la fonction interprétation et vous pourrez choisir le canal de votre choix. Si jamais vous avez des problèmes techniques au courant de la conférence, vous avez de la misère à nous entendre ou vous désirez passer un commentaire au niveau là, de la qualité du son, ou de la vidéo, n'hésitez pas à m'écrire directement à travers le chat de Zoom ou encore utiliser la boîte questions-réponses que je vais également surveiller. Si par contre vous avez des questions concernant les présentations des panélistes aujourd'hui, je vous redirigerai ensuite vers la boîte questions-réponses également et non pas le chat de Zoom, puisque ce sera la boîte questions-réponses qui sera surveillée par les membres du webinaire pour pouvoir suivre vos questions. So just a little precision for our English guests. If you have questions regarding presentations or you want to do an intervention, you can do it through the Q&A box. There's going to be a functionality to write down a question, and then our panelists and member from the webinar will be able to either respond to your question through the Q&A box, or even address it directly into the webinar with their voice. So I wish you all a great meeting. Je vous souhaite à tous une belle conférence et on se parle à la fin. Au revoir.
Great, thanks very much, Alex. So on that point about the question, so on the question, we'll be having a Q&A session after, so please keep your questions to that session or add your questions to the Q&A box. So Climate Action Africa acknowledges that our teams located across the lands now known as Canada are on the traditional lands of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who have stewarded this land through generations. We respect and affirm the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples across this land and commit to walk in solidarity on a path to genuine reconciliation. Climate Action Africa commits to ensuring our teams conduct their programming in a manner that delivers on the calls of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Thank you very much. So I'm very happy to be your moderator today, and I'd like to just give you a brief overview of the session. So if we can move to the next slide, please. It's not moving forward for me. Yeah, thanks very much. So this is the program for today. We have a very packed session. So we're going to have some welcoming and opening remarks from Tanya Solovsky, who is with Alinea, followed by Amanda McKee from the NDC Partnership. And then we have a series of panelists. So as I mentioned before, I'll introduce the speakers as they come up. Afterwards, we'll have a Q&A session, and we'll finally have closing remarks from Marco Heredia, who is our project manager on Climate Action Africa. So I'd just like to say that today's webinar is aligned with this year's International Women's Day theme of rights, justice, and action for all women and girls. So you'll hear from these different partners about how they have contributed in the area of women's and youth climate leadership and the key takeaways and lessons learned. Okay, next slide, please. So just very quickly, some of the objectives. These are objectives for all our webinar series, and I just wanted to highlight that we are trying to underscore the important need for climate action in the Sub-Saharan and the whole continent of Africa, and look at the different kinds of technical support and partnerships that CAA, that Climate Action Africa has been supporting, and of course the impacts that are happening both locally and internationally. And I think the key point that we really want to highlight today is women's leadership efforts with these and how they link to the different development goals and IWD, the theme this year. Next slide, please. So as you see, we have our opening speakers. And so it is now my great pleasure to invite Tanya Solowski, who is Alinea's Vice President of Program Delivery, to open our session. Alinea has a long-standing commitment to advancing gender equality and social inclusion, commitments deeply tied to the IWD theme, and how these values underpin climate action Africa. So welcome, Tanya. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Catherine, and it's a real pleasure to be here. Good morning, bonjour et bienvenue. Welcome to the fourth webinar in our series, this one marking International Women's Day on March 8th. Over the last 40 years, Alinea has delivered hundreds of projects in more than 30 countries across sectors ranging from health and education to agriculture and rural livelihoods, governance, justice reform, peace and security, climate resilience and response, and more. Promoting gender equality has been a central component of our work for decades because it is integral to effective development programming. Many of our projects are built around gender equality results, such as our work in promoting women's economic empowerment, more equitable distribution of unpaid care work, or enabling girls in non-traditional trades. For example, our Pacific Guardians project ties together climate change adaptation and women's entrepreneurship in 3 small Pacific Island nations. This project works with rural women entrepreneurs to improve the sustainable use of resources in climate-vulnerable coral reefs and coastal mangrove systems, while providing improved ecosystem services, increased market access, and opportunities to develop their community leadership and participation. What this project addresses, and what we know is well understood, is that gender inequality means that women and men experience the effects of climate change differently. Inequalities also affect how and how much women and girls are able to engage in climate response. Women and girls around the world, and especially in Africa, shoulder an unequal responsibility for securing fuel, food, water, and other resources, as well as caring for others. And as a result, they find themselves at greater risk of experiencing detrimental climate impacts. The Expert Deployment Mechanism Climate Action Africa project, EDM-CAA, which we simply know as CAA, is about supporting short-term technical assistance with people and institutions across Sub-Saharan Africa. Through CAA, primarily Canadian experts partner with governments, NGOs, civil society, the private sector, and academia on the locally identified climate priorities that matter the most to them. CAA is funded by Global Affairs Canada and is implemented through a partnership of Alinea International, Econoler and WSP. And this funding has, over the last 4 years, enabled us to deliver 42 technical assistance initiatives and 14 South-South exchanges across the continent. CAA helps countries advance their Paris Agreement commitments with a deliberate focus on ensuring that women and youth, as well as men, are meaningfully leading climate action. What sets CAA apart is that it tackles climate issues that are often invisible or marginalized in traditional climate programs, but deeply felt in daily life. In Ghana, for example, one initiative addressed period poverty, showing how access to menstrual products is tied to water scarcity, school attendance, and girls' ability to participate in climate solutions. In Kenya, CAA recognized caregivers as frontline climate responders and supported them while strengthening childcare centers to withstand heat and flooding, while also building emergency preparedness and advocacy skills. CAA has invested in the next generation of climate leaders, supporting women and youth to join regional negotiator training and participate in UN fora, including COPs, for the first time. And we are seeing real results. A recent survey showed a 100% increase in women in formal leadership roles after participating in a CAA initiative. 3/4 of women reported having an active voice in climate dialogues, up from just 25% before their involvement, and 2/3 said their influence had increased a lot. CAA is also leaving behind stronger institutions. For example, we supported the Rwanda Water Resources Board to develop a new gender mainstreaming strategy and related tools for data collection and use. And in Malawi, CAA worked with local partners to strengthen a women's climate governance network, which is now attracting government and donor interest. Alinea is extremely proud to lead this work with our partners. Together, we're expanding opportunities for women in climate leadership, and helping countries deliver on their climate commitments, from reducing emissions to strengthening water, agriculture, and renewable energy systems. And with that, I am going to get out of the way. I'm excited to turn the floor over for you to hear directly from some of our CAA initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. So this year's IW theme prompts us to ensure that all women and girls can fully and meaningfully participate in shaping climate solutions. This aligns with global climate policy processes where gender equality is increasingly recognized as crucial to effective, equitable climate governance. With this in mind, it is an honor to introduce Amanda McKee, the Director of Knowledge and Learning at the NDC Partnership, to give the keynote presentation. So welcome, Amanda.
Wonderful. Thank you, Catherine, and thank you for this invitation today. So I'm joining you from the NDC Partnership, and if we can go to the next slide, just to give you a quick word on who we are. We are a global coalition that brings together developing countries and institutions to collaborate in accelerating the implementation of the Paris Agreement. We really do this through working to strengthen the capacity for and the collaboration around country-owned climate and development action that's aligned with countries' nationally determined contributions. So through the NDC Partnership, we support countries in three main areas. This is where we look to have an impact. The first is on the implementation of their NDCs, so actually helping them to apply enhanced capacity to mainstream climate, improve the enabling environments, and this includes for both mitigation and adaptation. We work with countries to help them to unlock finance for climate action. And then thirdly, we also work with them to help actually develop higher quality and more ambitious NDCs over time. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Gender equality is one of the NDC Partnership's 10 guiding principles, and it's an active area through which we work with our country members. What we have seen over the years is that there's been a steady growth in countries requesting support for better inclusion in climate action, with a steady increase across different groups and themes, really since the NDC Partnership started working in 2017. Currently, we're supporting about 105 of our developing country members in their NDC development, NDC implementation, and of those 105 countries, 86 of them have requested specific support for gender responsive climate action. If we look at what that means, we can break this down into two groups. Of those 86 countries, 51 have requested support that really prioritizes a gender-focused activity. So looking at what gender actually means in their NDC climate action, whereas 65 countries have requested support to look at how to better mainstream gender or how to measure the impact through the collection of specific data. We look specifically over the last years, we've been supporting countries in the development of their new NDCs, and more than half of countries have requested support for a few key things. This includes enhancing government capacity to really work on gender mainstreaming. This includes support to better engage stakeholders, to better engage women in meaningful discussions on NDC development and implementation. It includes the development of gender indicators or better support to be able to measure them. But then also a lot of requests for support around developing analysis on gender equality to help to inform national and sectoral planning. And so what this means for the NDC Partnership, there's actually three key ways that we're really working to support gender equality. One is through these requests for support that we receive from countries. So helping them to understand where they could be strengthening efforts and help them match them with support providers. And I'll come to this in a moment because this is a really critical area where Climate Action Africa has stepped in as a key support provider in the region on this topic. we also work with countries, helping them to strengthen stakeholder engagement, strengthen the quality of that stakeholder engagement, the inclusivity of that engagement, so that it's leading to meaningful results. And then the last thing that we do is we spend a lot of time understanding what some of the best practices are that we're seeing in country, so we can help to scale those up across our broad membership to ensure that countries and partners are both learning from each other. So if we can go to the next slide, please. I wanted to give a quick snapshot of some of the specific support that we are providing on gender equality through the NDC partnership. And we've been fortunate over the last few years to benefit from support from Environment Climate Change Canada, which has allowed us to provide dedicated gender support through the NDC process to countries globally. With that support, we have been supporting 14 countries globally, but a few that are really aligned with the Climate Action Africa outcomes are support in Burkina Faso, Rwanda, Malawi, and I'll talk about a couple of those in a minute. We've also supported 39 countries globally to help them to understand their needs more clearly, outlining gender and social inclusion priorities in the development of their NDC that they submitted to the UNFCCC last year. And we've also been working to train our network of in-country facilitators so that they can better engage in inclusive whole of society processes. So next slide, please. I wanted to share two examples of the technical assistance support that Climate Action Africa has been providing through the NDC partnership to strengthen women's climate leadership and gender mainstreaming. The first one is in Malawi. And in Malawi, there have been cross-government efforts from the Ministry of Gender, Community Development, and Social Welfare, as well as the Department of Climate Change, to lead the revitalization of the Women's Network in Climate Action. And so Climate Action Africa, in collaboration with partners in Malawi, but also from Spain, conducted regional consultations and a rapid needs assessment that was followed by a multi-day women-led training of trainers. And this effort really helped to strengthen the visibility of this important network. It helped to launch a new communication platform, and it led to a fundable concept note for the WONECAM. For Malawi, this project was critical to bring women into local climate action. And this has been particularly critical to Malawi for their adaptation priorities, especially at the local level, where they face the greatest exclusion from planning and resource allocation processes. So this project is helping to fill this structural gap, building a network, ensuring government buy-in that's going to be essential for the country to move forward their climate and development commitments. The second example I wanted to share is from Burkina Faso. And here the Directorate General for Studies and Sectoral Statistics under the Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Innovation benefited from support to train researchers on how to strengthen gender climate elements of their work. This resulted in a nationally validated gender climate research nexus guide and strengthened the ministry's commitment to embedding gender climate approaches into the national strategic planning. And what we saw is this project fills a key space for the development of data regarding climate vulnerabilities, and it will also contribute to system-wide awareness of the gender differentiated impacts in the field. This also directly impacts and strengthens the application of additional work supported by the Government of Canada to assess Burkina Faso's previous NDC and identify transformational gender actions to be incorporated into the updated NDC. So each of these examples really showcase the impact of locally led approaches, helping to deliver strong results in country-driven projects. And they and the others that you'll hear from shortly are really clear examples of the institutional strengthening that's needed to determine the sustainability of gender equality efforts and social inclusion within climate action. So if we can go to the next slide, I wanted to conclude by sharing a few trends on how we're seeing gender equality really reflected in countries' newest NDCs that were just submitted to the UNFCCC. So of a study that we're undertaking, we've studied 54 NDCs that the NDC partnership supported directly. And of these 54 NDCs, 69% of them have strengthened their NDC development process to be more inclusive. Over 80% of those countries strengthened the process to include gender approaches to stakeholder engagement, while 50% targeted Indigenous people specifically in their approach to NDC 3.0 development. So we're seeing much more inclusive processes. We're also seeing that 89% of countries of those 54 have included gender responsive considerations in setting targets in their NDC. So 85% reviewed NDCs to include concrete activities and objectives specifically on gender equality. So we're seeing more inclusive processes, but also NDCs that are much more detailed in terms of their commitments towards gender equality. So the early data we're seeing is extremely promising. That doesn't mean that there's not work to do to close the gaps and to really strengthen the implementation of these goals. So looking ahead, we know what needs to be done to ensure that the implementation of countries' NDCs really leaves no one behind. And I wanted to leave you with 3 concluding thoughts on what's really important. And these also reflect some of the learnings and success stories that we've seen through the CAA project. The first one is that gender responsive climate data is foundational. It's not a nice to have, it's a necessary. We need to understand the differentiated impacts. We need to understand how different people are engaged in order to be able to make an impact and improve it. The second point is that participation alone in a process does not equal influence. And we know that what we're really working towards is meaningful participation. And a key part of that is institutional anchoring, ensuring that this isn't just about engaging a few women here or there, but this is really about creating those structures so that there's long-term sustainability in the process to include women in these important areas. And the third area is really around the importance of demand-driven, locally led approaches. This is how we deliver strong results that have buy-in on the ground and that actually ensure that this work is carried forward both by those people who are impacted, but also for those people who are impacted most. So with that, we can go to the next slide, which is just to say thank you. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of this conversation today, and back to you, Catherine.
Thank you very much, Amanda, and also for setting the stage for the panelists to come ahead. I think there's a few points in there that will really resonate as we listen to the different conversations today. So, and one of them, which is Rwanda, is one of the ones which is related to the NDC partnership. And I'd like to thank the NDC partnership also for their partnership in Climate Action Africa. It's been a really integral part of the work. So thanks, Amanda, and to all of your team. Okay, I'd like to switch over to, if we can go to the next slide of panelists, please, that would be great. Okay, so our first, I'd like to introduce our first presentation, which brings us to Ghana, where innovative approaches to climate action have linked menstrual health, youth leadership, water, and climate adaptation. And I'm just really thrilled to have this topic on the table because it's just one of those ones that's been kind of the outliers on climate action that some people go, And so it's been really exciting to see when we talk about locally led, like these ideas and these issues are coming from the communities, from the field. And so I think we're going to learn a lot today on Yeah, and on answering the for one of these issues, we've had several of these under Climate Action Africa, which have been really, yeah, they've been sort of cutting edge, and I think we're really contributing. So I have the pleasure of introducing Betty Osei-Bonsu Adjei, the Director of Operations and Programs at the Green Africa Youth Organization, GAIO, which most of you probably need no introduction to because of their great work. Anyhow, Betty, to provide us with an overview of the work undertaken on this initiative and the takeaways and lessons. So GAIO partnered with Future at Play on this initiative, and Future at Play is an organization headed by Eliza Hogan, who is a Canadian based in Kenya. So welcome, Betty. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've mentioned all the partners, so I don't think I have to even repeat those anymore. Greetings to everyone, and I just want to begin with a simple story. But before that, let me ask you a simple question as well. What does climate change have to do with menstruation? I know when Catherine was talking, I'm sure she was talking about is the linkage between these two topics. I think at first you should agree with me that they seem very different because one is environment and the other talks about women's health. But in many communities in Africa, they are largely and very deeply connected because when water becomes scarce, you find a lot of women, a lot of ladies are the ones who carry the most burden. Let me tell you a story to back this. There is a lady called Azuma in one of the communities we serve in the northern part of Ghana. This lady just entered junior high school, and one day, unexpectedly, she had her menstruation and she didn't know. What happened was she was about to respond to a question in class, only to stand up and see that she has been stained all over her red. And the entire class burst out laughing. They laughed at her, and she just felt so terrible. But surprisingly, the challenge for Azuma was not just about the embarrassment that she felt, but the fact that when she goes back home, she didn't have a lot of water to take care of herself because they were currently in the dry season at that time. Basic hygiene became very difficult, so she didn't come to school again until the beginning of her measures. So one of the training of trainers that has been made possible following the support we received from Climate Action Africa, I had to reach out to this lady, talk to her about what menstruation means, what it means to take care of yourself, menstrual hygiene. And this was done under the Adaptation and Resilience Project of GAIO, providing her with sanitary pads and then supporting her on how to even produce her own reusable sanitary pad. At the end of the day, she was able to gain back her confidence and return back to school. This is what the work we are doing, and this is the real difference it's making on the ground. Next slide. For the past 2 years now, we've been doing this, and you can see the key areas that we are tackling, from water scarcity to period poverty, the dignity that it presents to women, hygiene itself and its linkage to climate adaptation, as well as youth leadership in this space. Next slide. To do this work, our approach has spanned in different angles, from training to implementation and also producing substantial products. So first of all, we had an idea to do training of trainers. You train the people in the communities and they train the other communities. So you have replicated results. So we did this across 3 communities: Kandiga, Sirigu, and Bongo. And our model involved education in terms of climate, menstrual health, water for adaptation or adaptation strategies. And then in terms of leadership skills, and strongly, we focused on building partnership with the local chiefs, because within the communities, you realize that as much as you want education to go, or you want awareness to spread, the chiefs, the leaders are the one who have the mandate and they can give you access to the communities. Next slide. Following our approach, these are the tools we use to execute this particular project. We looked at system thinking. How do we connect water scarcity to climate change, and then menstrual health. This is a topic that everyone is really concerned about. And this year, we'll be embarking to do a research to understand the key linkages between these three concepts, even if practically we've seen it on the ground. We also look at gender inclusion. Very key for us is gender inclusion. And I'm happy to hear Amanda even mention this. We looked at community ownership as well, the community owning the project. That's why we looked at the angle of training of trainers, and then participatory learning, where we are combining theory with practical. Whilst they are learning the theory aspects within the schools, we are teaching them. We have a center where we train the women to produce the pads, and these parts are distributed to themselves. They're able to get some income from it as well. Next slide. Mottos. We also looked at the training of trainers, where we're able to develop a training guide for sustainability, because it's not enough going from one school to another training people, but it has to be documented so that people can easily refer to them and train the rest of their community. I'll just mention one last one, youth-led advocacy. I think very key for us is youth, because youth is the engine for the future. We are the next doctors, we are the next leaders, we are the next politicians. So it's very important that we target the youth within this community. So we are looking at age range from 5 years to 18, 24 going. Next slide. Just this picture displayed in front of you is a community derby, and I'm sure, is it Catherine I see in the picture? Where they were present in...
That's Eliza.
Okay. Okay. So they were present in Ghana, and we had this derby where 3 of the chiefs from the adjacent communities came to acknowledge the training being held. And the communities also celebrated the training of the trainers, so the trainers that we were training. And the greatest spotlight for us is following such of this engagement that we have, 2 of the training of trainers were supported to attend the Conference of Parties, COP29 in Baku. So this is really, very important for us, because now it doesn't just stay at the community, it translates to policy engagement as well. Next slide. Next slide. Our outcomes and impact has been really great so far. We've been able to increase the awareness of period within the community, because there's been a lot of stigma around it, especially with the males. So we've been able to reduce the stigma around 3 communities. We've been able to train more than 75 young people to serve as training of trainers, impacting 5,000 of the community members. We've been able to also forge stronger collaboration, not just with Alinea, Climate Action Africa. We also have other partners that we work with as well, especially with drilling boreholes within the community, and as well increasing male engagement in the community when it comes to period. This is a topic that males don't want to hear about. Females are scared to talk about it or even show it. So it's very, very important that male are very, very well engaged in terms of education. And then lastly, establishing a youth-led center where we create hubs within the schools, and currently we've been able to reach 3 schools. We are planning on expanding to 14 other schools this year. I think the future of the work doesn't just end here. We plan on advancing the research I spoke to you about, hopefully this year, drilling 1 additional boreholes this year. We also want to expand the training of trainers program from 75 to add another 75 this year to reach the 14 schools. We also want to scale the reusable pad production. And this year we plan to do 200 more of those reusable pads, so that ladies will be able to get access to better, proper hygiene when it's time for them to have their messes. I think in whole, for us, Gaio really looks at this topic to be very, very key, because when you talk about climate adaptation, water access, and resilience, we are not just talking about access to water, we're not just talking about education, but we're also looking at dignity and dignity for women as well. Next slide. And on this note, I just want to say a very big thank you and leave you with this quote. If we want climate resilience in Africa, we must start with dignity, and dignity begins with water, youth leadership, and the courage to break the silence. Thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Betty. Really appreciate opening up the conversation to a wider audience. It's just such an important topic, and we did another initiative that was in Sierra Leone and Freetown, which we talked about in another webinar. And one of the issues that came up was the issue around heat and the impact on women and their menstrual cycles too, and all sorts of hormonal issues. So there's so many different impacts that we're starting to look at and really understand. And so it'll be interesting to see where the research goes. So thank you so much, Betty. Our second presentation now is going to take us to Rwanda, where the initiative focused on embedding gender equality into the institutional water governance of the Rwanda Water Resources Board. Try saying that a few times fast. Doreen Benamara, the gender expert from InExchange, was instrumental in working with the RWB on their gender equality mainstreaming strategy and related tool development and gender equality training. And there's many different aspects that were obviously incorporated into this work. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing Doreen speak about the different activities and the outcomes of this work and the potential impacts. So welcome, Doreen.
Thank you, Catherine. Hi, everyone. So next slide, please. Okay. So I wanted to start with this statement because water is a human right. We know that. But access, power dynamics, and benefits are not equally distributed. And those nuances are important because through the work that we did in Rwanda and through the work overall with CAA, we are working on making an impact on those nuances so we can ensure that women and girls have equitable access and equitable decision-making power over water. Next slide, please. So as Catherine mentioned, the purpose of this technical assistance was to support the Rwanda Water Resource Board to integrate gender equality and social inclusion into resource management, to strengthen data system and planning, and to build institutional capacity tools. Rwanda is well known across the world and often mentioned as an example when it comes to gender equality. But when it comes to water management at different levels, actually, we noticed that the water governance systems did not take into consideration sex disaggregated data. And as one of my colleagues mentioned earlier, if you don't collect sex disaggregated data, then you miss the story and you miss the reality lived by thousands, millions of people, in that case, women and girls. And so in order to conduct this technical assistance, we had a clear strategy and approach. So we conducted a baseline study where we met with we conducted key informant interview. We also conducted focus group. We went to 4 different districts in rural areas in order to collect those information, those data, those stories from women, girls, but also for all community members. We also did a document review. As I said, Rwanda is well known when it comes to their political leadership to achieve gender equality. So there was a lot of guideline, strategic document, government guidelines and directives available. And also we leverage an existing analytical framework. Our purpose really was not to add more work, to the team on the ground, it was really to look at what's already existing, what can be leveraged, and how can we improve the current processes in order to ensure institutional anchoring through simplified implementation. This one is really important, and also sustainable impact. Next slide, please. So as we all know, water is not a gender-neutral resource. The way it is accessed, managed, and governed is shaped by social roles, economic opportunities, and cultural norms. In Rwanda, like in many other countries, women and girls are primarily responsible for domestic water collection, while men dominate leadership positions in irrigation cooperatives, hydropower enterprises, and mining operations. So without sex disaggregated data and intersectional data, these differences remain hidden, and the processes that were in place were what we call gender blind. I want to mention that in Rwanda, women and girls are responsible for fetching water, and on average, they have to work 30 minutes back and forth to fetch water. Also, agriculture is the main industry where water is used, industry where you will find a majority of women. Traditionally, agriculture is a woman-dominated industry through smallholders, small farms, and also mining and hydropowers. Working with the Rwanda Water Resource Board, when it comes to what we qualify as water users, we qualify people extracting water, right? So again, hydropower, mining, agriculture are the main industries that uses water in the country. Next slide, please. This is what I have mentioned, maybe data that I can also share here with you that are very interesting when it comes to hydropower. Across our study, we find out that only one hydropower company is woman-owned. When it comes to mining, so women play an important role into the operation mining operations, but when it comes to decision making, again, they are inexistent. Agriculture, as I said, is dominated by women through small production, but actually, when they are most of the time they are regrouped within into a cooperative. And what was interesting is to find out that, if there is one man, so cooperatives usually are dominated by women, right? Most women are members of cooperative. But if there is one single man, actually, he will be the decision maker. Also, if there is a couple, so the wife and the husband, both are members of the cooperative. And if the woman is the leader of the cooperative, when it comes to making decision, she will align behind her husband's opinion and decision. So we see and we know the power and the heaviness of cultural norms when it comes to women decision making, even though they have access, which is a first step to leadership roles in certain occasions, then they still don't have the willpower to make that decision. So those information are important to collect when it comes back to the Rwanda Water Resources Board, because it allows them to identify how to mitigate those challenges and how to better support women when it comes to extracting water for their activity. Next slide, please. So as I said, we leveraged what already exists. So we decided to use a dual framework approach to identify the gap. The first framework that we decided to use is the Mother Gender Planning Framework. It's a very practical tool helping to analyze gender roles, access to and control over resources, and distinguish between immediate practical needs, what can be done right now, what needs to be done right now, and long-term strategic interest. And we decided to combine this framework with the CARES. Can you come back, please, to the previous slide? With the CARES Gender Equality Framework, which on a different level helps promote transformative change across 3 domains: agency, relations, and structure. So for the RWB, so the Rwanda Water Resource Board, what it means is that we offer them a structured, evidence-based approach to identify gender gaps in water use and governance, while linking findings directly to national policy and institutional planning, right? So we look at what was existing and we combined everything to make it as effective as possible. Next slide, please. So the short-term impacts that we were able to observe while working on this technical assistance was, first of all, an improved gender-responsive data system. So we took the Rwanda Water Board water surveys and we embedded GC questions inside their existing tool. So that's one. Then we increased institutional awareness and capacity through different tools that we created. So we developed a practical toolkit, a step-by-step toolkit, very practical again, so we don't leave it on the shelf and never look at it again. We also developed an addendum to the 2020 water users and use assessment, notifying the gaps that we had observed. And finally, we also developed and conducted a 2-day trainings to share our finding, but also we looked at strategic documents and we helped the audience. So the audience was made of RWB members, but also GE practitioners and civil societies responsible. And we provide them the tools, so the 2 frameworks that I shared earlier, and we help them apply those tools to the existing strategic document in order for all the parts involved to understand what was missing, to look at things with a gender lens, but also to better understand how to collaborate together in order to have a real and sustainable impact. And last but not least, we developed a clear implementation roadmap through the gender mainstreaming strategy. Next, please. So when women and vulnerable groups shape water decisions,
just a 2-minute warning too just 2-minute warning. So the time is running tight. Thanks, Doreen.
This is the last slide. Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, thanks.
So when women and vulnerable groups share water decisions, resilience improves for everyone. So the few takeaways here that I think are worth noting. We focused on practicality more than theory. The data, any data, and most especially gender disaggregated data, is the foundation of equity. We cannot reach equity without data, because those data, they tell us the stories and they tell us the lived realities of the individuals we are trying to support. Institutional leadership is critical, we know that. Partnerships, especially between institutions and civil society organizations, accelerate change and impact. This type of technical assistance can catalyze systemic change. And finally, gender just climate action is achievable even with limited resources. We hear it a lot. We don't have the resources, but there is ways that we can leverage to implement gender equality strategies and to make sustainable impact based on limited resources. And I believe it's the last slide. Next slide, please. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen. Really appreciate the overview of the work in Rwanda, which was really comprehensive on the ground. And it's hard to capture everything that was done. So hopefully over the next few months, we'll be doing a lot of documenting to share more of the details. So thank you so much. Finally, we're going to turn to Uganda, where the initiative focused directly on strengthening women's climate leadership and ensuring that women's voices have a place in district level climate action planning. So please welcome Jimena Ezagir of ESSA and Gertrude Kinyangi, who is the Executive Director of the Support for Women in Agriculture and Environment, or SWAGEN, from Uganda. So over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine, for the introduction. Can you just let me know that you can hear me?
It's all good, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So as Catherine mentioned, over the next few minutes, we'll share reflections from a technical assistance assignment that we worked on between November 2023 and October 2024 in collaboration with SWAGEN, which is Uganda's civil society organization. And I'll be doing the most of the presenting, but really Gertrude will come in at the end with the key messages that she wanted to convey as the institutional kind of representative that requested the work from Climate Action Africa in the first place. So before starting, I also wanted to acknowledge that our team members, Samantha Bordley and Godliver Busingi, contributed enormously to this and wouldn't have been possible without them. Yeah, so next slide, yes. Okay, the context for this assignment may feel familiar to you. Uganda, like probably many other countries, has really strong climate and gender legal and policy frameworks and ambitious nationally determined contributions on NDC. They also have mechanisms to translate international and national commitments to the local level, including requirements for local governments to develop and then implement district climate change action plans, or DCAPs. At the same time, climate impacts are intensifying, and as we've heard from other speakers as well, climate vulnerabilities are unevenly distributed. So there really is an urgency for Uganda's ambitious NDC commitments to be felt on the ground. However, climate action at the district level is lagging, and women's meaningful participation in climate decision-making remains limited. But the great potential there of civil society to promote and strengthen implementation remains untapped as well. So our work focused on the design and delivery of 3 regional workshops, bringing together leaders of women's civil society organizations or community-based organizations, as well as district local government representatives. We worked towards the 2 objectives that you see on the right-hand side of the slide to ultimately strengthen gender-responsive planning and implementation of Uganda's NDC and related climate policies. Next slide, please. 2 overarching principles guided our approach. The first one was co-development, and the second one was peer learning, meaning learning with and from each other. From the outset, ESSA, which is the organization where I work, and me as the team leader of the project team, we at ESSA saw ourselves and SWAGEN, i.e. Gertrude's organization, as one team. We saw our role not as external kind of technical experts coming up with solutions, but really as knowledge brokers and facilitators, convening and supporting climate training that is for Ugandans by Ugandans. Peer learning was integrated in all our group activities. For example, districts that had completed their DCAPs showcased the tangible benefits to their peers, which served as a source of practical inspiration rather than presenting DCAPs as an abstract concept. Next slide, please. So in the next 4 slides, I'm just going to share some 4 quick lessons that I took away from our experience with this technical assistance initiative. And our first lesson was about redefining expertise, kind of connected to what I just said. Applying the nothing about us without us mindset really meant intentionally centering Ugandan expertise alongside our international kind of thematic knowledge. And this shifted our role from Canadian experts to facilitators of an inclusive process. A key mechanism for this was the formation of a training advisory group, or the TAG as we call it. Through this group, we convened 7 national women's organizations in addition to SWAGAN, and together in a 3-day in-person write shop, we co-designed learning objectives and developed the curriculum from the ground up. This process not only strengthened the substance of the training based on collaborative input from strong Ugandan female leaders in gender and climate action, it also helped build rapport between ESSA and SWAGAN, which was really important to be able to carry out the initiative. Next slide, please. Our second lesson was about designing deliberately for power dynamics. The training, as I mentioned, brought together grassroots women leaders, some with low literacy levels, as well as district agricultural officers and planners, as well as national government officials. In mixed audiences like this, power asymmetries can easily silence voices. And we tried to address this directly. We structured our 3-day training with day 1 dedicated exclusively to women CSO leaders. This is what we called the Women's Climate Leadership Day. This day provided the opportunity to build shared language around climate concepts as well as gender concepts, strengthen advocacy messaging, and build confidence to then be able to engage in the further 2-day sessions with the district officers. So on days 2 and 3, women leaders joined district government officers for what we called the shared learning platform. And these sessions focused on climate fundamentals and building skills to identify, plan, and budget for gender-responsive adaptation and mitigation actions. And here, our role, like the role of ESSA, was more of a choreographer with national government officials as lecturers and facilitators of several sessions. But as experienced facilitators ourselves, we made careful judgment calls and stepped in when needed to manage tensions and ensured balanced participation to create space for diverse voices. Next slide, please. Our third lesson was about trust. The co-development approach that we took really led to a strong partnership with Uganda's Ministry of Water and Environment, which is the government lead for climate change, or the central government lead for climate change. The ministry took an active role in preparation and delivery of the training. Importantly, because we are constrained in time, we did not develop a formal written agreement detailing roles and responsibilities with the ministry. Instead, we used practical tools like the training agenda and participant invitation templates as so-called boundary objects, where we kind of iterated to clarify expectations and acceptable practices. These written tools helped us navigate differences in norms, including things like logistics such as travel allowances, particularly when virtual meetings were difficult to coordinate with the national team from the ministry. Flexibility here was really important, and I thank Catherine and the team at Climate Action Africa for this. But the ability to reallocate resources within the overall budget allowed us to adapt to emerging needs while maintaining good accountability with our finance officers there at Alinea. But had we not taken the leap of faith, I think the local government engagement component would not have been as strong. And really, the contribution of this assignment, this technical assistance initiative, to the bigger picture was emphasized by our colleague from the ministry's climate change department, who said that the training supported the ministry's mandate, or the ministry in delivering on their mandate in areas of education and awareness, and contributed to operationalizing the Climate Change Act. And this was really meaningful to us. Next slide, please. Oh, there's a slide missing. Okay, well, I guess I'll move on to that one then. Okay, there was one other lesson, and maybe we can come back to it if we have time. But just to give you a little bit of information on short-term results. So results by the numbers. In total, the assignment trained 78 women leaders from civil society and community-based organizations, alongside district officers responsible for climate action planning. It also strengthened local climate action capacity across 11 districts in Uganda, and resulted in self-reported increases in knowledge and skills among all participants in topics such as climate science and how to look at planning from a adaptation and mitigation perspective. But as we know, numbers never tell the full story. And so here I'll turn to my colleague Gertrude to end the presentation. Next slide, please.
You're on mute, Gertrude.
Thank you, Mena, for the opportunity to present with you, and Catherine for the opportunity to participate in this webinar. So, of course, the numbers don't paint the whole picture. So I'll end the presentation with my perspective on the qualitative and transformative contributions of these assignments with ESA. Number one, women leadership in climate action was highlighted and recognized. This had been long overdue, considering that women are at the front line of climate disaster risk preparation, response, reduction, and mitigation. Second, a door was opened for women's qualitative lived experiences to inform policy rather than the mechanical quantitative research findings of armchair executives, which are but assumptions. Thirdly, local knowledge and science found common ground to tackle a common problem. There was an interaction between the local practice level and the policy level. And lastly, an important interaction between women leaders and national and district technical teams helped narrow the gap between policy and practice. Even short-time assignments such as this, it has been proven, this particular assignment proved, one can create ripples of change. I will leave you with one story of a participant, Ziada, a participant from our first cohort. She secured a paid contract after training to lead youth climate awareness in the manufacturing sector. She broke into the climate debates. She attends COPs now. She credited her success to the strategic communication skills she developed during the workshop. There are several stories like this from the women participants, but we are out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mena and Gertrude. And yeah, this was one of our very early technical assistance initiatives where we were figuring out how it all works. And so it was a really thrilling group of partners to work with on this, and we all kind of muddled through together. And I think some really exciting outcomes came out of the work. So thank you so much for your presentation. Okay, that ends the panelist presentations now, and I'd like to thank everybody, first of all, thank all the panelists and thank all the speakers today. And we're going to move to a question and answer session. There are a few questions in here. I'm not sure we're going to get to all of them, but I will try and see what's in here. And I had some additional questions that were also sent in before. So I will, the ones in English I will read out and share with who I think it's for. And in French, I know that there's one for Chad and Cameroon, so you have to let me know who that is also aimed at. So let me just ask the first question then, which seems to be geared towards Betty. How do we attribute water scarcity to climate change versus poor water governance that leads to poor access to water for women and menstrual health? So Betty, thank you if you have some thoughts about that.
Okay, I think it's a very interesting and brilliant question. I'll just say, I think both of them goes hand in hand, governance failure and climate change effects as well. I'll just take it this way. I think climate change can affect the availability of water. Maybe it could be through longer dry season, high temperatures, irregular rainfall. But at the same time, poor water governance also affects how the water is managed. So how it is also distributed and how it's maintained. So if climate change creates pressure on the water resources, then you see that government or governance would just have like a lot of, should I say, barriers or gaps in terms of ensuring that the people that have access to that water really have access to those water. So you then find out that women and girls managing their menstrual health are not able to access the water. So I think both of those narratives goes hand in hand. They interact with each other. And that's why our approach largely focuses on tackling both of them, climate adaptation and then water access together. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Betty. Okay, we have a question here in French. I can read it, but I think it might need a bit more explanation because it's speaking also about Chad and Cameroon. So I'm not sure who it's aimed at. So, comment gérez-vous la tension entre les politiques nationales de conservation et les besoins de survie quotidiens des communautés dans les pays sahélo-sahariens tels que le Tchad et le Cameroun? So I'm not sure if anybody wants to tackle that directly or if somebody has some thoughts on that, or if the person who asked the question, it's Jirabe, Urban Jirabe. So if you want to also say, is there a person that you wanted to direct this question to in particular, or were you just looking for a general response? Any thoughts from anybody? Otherwise, what I think we might do is we might leave that question to the end and come back to it if somebody has any thoughts. And I know we have another project that also works in Chad and Cameroon, but I don't know if we have anybody online about that one. But I think the point about the difference between the needs to survive on the ground and the tension between the policies is a really important one. So let's come back to that. And if we don't have an answer here, we'll find an answer and we'll get that to you in an email or somehow after. I think there's probably a way we can do that.
Catherine, if I might, it's Jimena.
Yeah, sure.
Just
Jimena,
a quick thought is that what we saw with a project in Uganda that brought together kind of national or tried to operationalize sort of national commitments with local level action is that higher level commitments, targets, ambitions about increasing or reducing climate risk or reducing climate vulnerability generally tend to be quite broad. And so it's really important to find how that can be expressed at the local level in alignment with local needs. And in that respect, I really think that Betty's project with period poverty and in connection to water scarcity is really a good connection between kind of strategic level, what might be strategic level goals and something that's of immediate need to half the population, population who menstruates. That would be my kind of quick response to that question.
Thanks, Jimena. So I think that's important, Betty. I don't know if you want to add anything or not, or we can come back to that later.
Oh, good.
Okay. So the next question on here is, what can be done to increase women entering and being retained in managerial positions for integrated water resource management? It is also important for women to have skills at that higher level. So Doreen, is there anything out of the Rwanda experience that would help us look at this question? Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Actually, this is a conversation we have had when conducting the key informant interviews. And what came back is that it has to start in school. Because it's not enough to have a company with inclusive human resources, or maybe, objectives, because what we hear oftentimes is, oh, but we have those HR policies in place, but we don't find women, or women don't apply to us, to our role. So we have to go into universities, specialty schools, and even earlier sometimes to encourage the young girls to pursue STEM in school. That's one. And then going into university and specialty schools where women study STEM, to let them know that actually they are strongly encouraged to apply for such and such roles. Oftentimes, it's not a lack of talent, it's a lack of visibility. It's a lack of understanding that as a woman, despite, the cultural context, you can have access to those type of roles. So it's a multi-layer work, the school layer, encouraging young girls to go into STEM, then going to those university specialties classes to encourage the woman there to apply to those roles within those companies.
Thanks very much, Tarine. Okay, I'm actually going to ask Eric Nimambona to actually ask it in French, because when I try to do it in French, I'm hearing all the English translations, so it's a little bit too confusing having both languages going at once. So Eric, could we open up the mic for Eric and that he could ask the question? And it's for Betty in Ghana. Alex, is there a way to open it up for Eric? Okay, got it. Great.
Oui, alors, merci beaucoup. Je vais poser la question. En fait, l'exemple du du Ghana, c'est ma surprise. Surtout, ils ont commencé même par la question de qui est la relation entre la menstruation et l'environnement pas bien visible. L'exemple qui a été donné ici de la fille qui a des problèmes de menstruation à l'école, j'ai compris qu'il y a le problème concernant le manque d'eau et le manque de matériel de dignité comme les pâtes. Alors, est-ce que dans le cadre de votre projet, y aurait-il des points d'eau qui ont été rendus accessibles aux ces enfants? Bien les pads aussi qui posent un problème, qui ont été aussi distribués. S'il y en a combien qui ont été confectionnés? Vous avez dit que vous avez formé les gens pour faire, pour former les filles sur la confection des pads. Oui, oui, il y a question aussi de stigmatisation. Vous avez parlé qu'il y a réduction de la stigmatisation, mais est-ce qu'il y aurait une sorte de témoignage qui montre cette réduction? Merci beaucoup.
Okay, thank you. That's a 5-in-1 question, but I'll take it one after the other. So I'll start from the last one, which is on stigma, how we address stigma and what shows that we addressed stigma. I think, first of all, I showed you a picture that depicted chiefs coming to celebrate the training of trainers. I think for us, that really shows leadership. It shows that the heads of the family are backing the project. So with that, you see men now begin to embrace, and boys and children begin to embrace the idea or the conversation of ladies having their period, and it's normal. And if you look at the story, I mentioned that she went back to school, she became good, she became okay, and she now had to train other young ladies in the classroom to talk about period poverty, and it's okay for ladies to have their period, it's normal. And I'll tackle the question of borehole. Within the northern part of Ghana, because of its temperature, the water level usually go low, below the water table. So it's very difficult for them to use their resources to drain or drill water and get access to water. So in many communities, you would see that there are few available water sources, and that's why GAIO added it to its mandate to make water accessible. So currently, we've provided 3 boreholes from the onset of the project. This year, we want to have 1 more borehole provided to the community. And I think it links back to the previous question of governance failure and climate change issues within the community. So it's a combination of both of them. In terms of pad production, currently we've been able to distribute 134 pads to the community. Because at the first year of the project, it was the baseline. We had to do a lot of analysis to really understand what is happening and the intervention and how the intervention would be very impactful. So this latter year of the project, then we started the training to produce a reusable pad. So getting the facility, getting the teachers to train them, and then getting some of the women themselves in the community to learn how to do the training and produce the pad, then the distribution. We are looking to create a revenue model from it so that they can produce it themselves and then start selling it themselves. I hope I responded to your question. It was quite a lot. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And we do have a lot of other questions here. Eric, we have a lot of questions here, but I think we're going to have to come back to them somehow after, as we're getting close to the end. And I do want to give some time to Marco to also give some words just to sort of close the session. So I wanted to thank everybody for the insightful discussions today, and obviously has stirred a lot of interesting thought and questions coming out. So this is really lovely to see that it is that stimulating that kind of interest. And as I mentioned before, over the next few months, we will be putting together the different lessons. So please stay tuned. And I'm going to hand it over to Marco if you're there, Marco. I think we can now move into last words and closing the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine. Really, really interesting discussions. And before offering a few brief reflections to close our session, allow me first to thank our distinguished speakers and participants for this rich and insightful discussion. I will briefly highlight 3 key takeaways that emerged from our conversation on women's participation and leadership in climate action today. First, the presentations reminded us that women leadership in climate action is not only about representation. This is really important. It is about transformation. Across the presentations from Ghana, Rwanda, and Uganda, we saw how gender-responsive climate action becomes real when it connects communities, institutions, and policy frameworks. In Ghana, we saw how youth-led initiatives are linking climate action, water management, and menstrual health in ways that strengthen dignity and resilience. As we heard today, menstrual health is not only a health issue, which it is also a climate issue, particularly where water scarcity and climate change intersect with daily life. In Rwanda, we saw how gender equality can be embedded directly into the institutional architecture of water governance, ensuring that planning, data systems, and policy frameworks can reflect the realities of women and communities. And in Uganda, we heard how women's civil society organizations can bridge the gap between national climate commitments and local implementation, thus helping translate climate policy into action on the ground. Ces expériences illustrent une leçon essentielle. La gouvernance climatique inclusive ne se limite pas à des principes ou à des engagements politiques. Il se construit à travers des outils concrets, des institutions solides et de la participation active des communautés. Second, today's discussions highlighted the importance of how technical expertise is delivered. Through Climate Action Africa, technical experts work directly with requesting organizations from the public sector, the private, and the civil society, co-developing solutions that respond to national priorities while strengthening institutional capacity. Cette approche permet non seulement de mobiliser une expertise technique de haut niveau, mais aussi de garantir l'appropriation nationale des solutions et leur ancrage dans les réalités locales. I would also like to recognize the important role of the NDC partnership, whose collaboration has reported the implementation of 10 initiatives to date in Climate Action Africa, helping countries to strengthen climate governance and advance inclusive climate action. Across the program, we have seen institutional transformation through the adoption of national strategies, technical guidelines, training curricula, and working groups embedding gender-responsive climate governance in 34 countries, including the ones that we have spoken about today, and others such as Kenya, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, Malawi, Benin, and Rwanda, as discussed. Third point, this work has helped reveal some elements that often remains invisible. Through new data systems, analytical tools, and gender assessments, these initiatives have helped uncover how policies, institutional systems, and even everyday practices can remain unintentionally gender blind. Ces données mettent en lumière des réalités qui, dans une société qui aspire à offrir des opportunités égales à tous et à toutes, ne peut tout simplement pas être ignorée. Because what this work shows clearly is that gender inequality is often not the result of explicit exclusion, but of systems that were designed without fully considering women's experiences in leadership. And once these gaps become visible, they can be addressed. Across more than 200 participants involved in leadership and capacity building initiatives, we have already seen, at this stage, measurably improvements in knowledge, advocacy, capacity, confidence related to women's climate leadership. Equally important has been the strength of the participation behind these achievements, and we have seen it. Climate Action Africa has worked alongside organizations such as UNDP, UNEP, FAO, NDC Partnership, as discussed, GIZ, CARE, as well as national institutions and civil society partners across Africa. So, alors, à l'approche de la Journée internationale des femmes, cette conversation nous rappelle une vérité simple. La résilience climatique ne peut être pas atteinte sans l'égalité entre les femmes et les hommes. Women are not among those most affected by climate change. They are also leaders, and we have seen that here today, innovators, and essential actors in building climate solutions. Les exemples présentés aujourd'hui démontrent que lorsque les femmes participent pleinement aux décisions climatiques, les politiques deviennent plus inclusives, les institutions plus solides et les sociétés plus résilientes. Let me conclude by thanking our speakers, partners, and participants for their commitment and leadership. Your work shows clearly that gender-responsive climate action is not an aspiration. It is already happening. And the message from today's discussion, I believe it is clear. When women lead climate action, we do not advance equality. We strengthen the very foundations of resilient, sustainable societies. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, Marco, for that. And it's perfect where it's just almost at the top of the hour. So just before we close, I wanted to please ask you, there will be a survey that pops up after the presentation, after the webinar. If you could please take a minute to just fill that in. It's a pretty quick survey. We very much appreciate it. And I want to thank you all again for joining us today. It was a very, very interesting discussion, and we look forward to sharing more as we go forward. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.